This is Zach McCombs with Impact
Technologies.
And he's going to be doing our training. We've installed a new speaker system, side fields, lots of things in the sanctuary. It is February 2024, and he's going to kind of explain what's changed and some things about the system.
Yes, so I'll dive right in. I think, just like what you were saying, I think it's important that we start by explaining what we did, why we did it. So coming in and evaluating the sound system, it was, it lacked a little bit of clarity. We were unhappy with some of the, we wanted to be a little bit more dynamic with or flexible with the choir microphones. And looking at the main speaker solution, the big challenge was, the church aesthetic and the coverage pattern that you needed to have. So we found a speaker that's got a very wide dispersion pattern. However, it's not more than 180 degrees, which is what it would have to be in order to deal with a church that worships a little bit more in the round like you guys do. So what we did was we added some fill speakers that are on the very far left and right, sometimes where the choir sits, and over there on the other side of the pulpit, so that we just kind of filled in a little bit of those high frequencies that you're missing because you're not directly in the dispersion pattern. So that's what we added. That's why the turn on, turn off procedure, I don't think has changed at all. So that will remain the same. But the other big upgrade is we added a digital snake, which means the main signal from the microphones coming back to the tech booth is a Cat6 cable instead of a bunch of mic lines like what you had in the past, which are susceptible to interference and those kind of things. So the digital snake really gets that signal back here in the clearest way possible. It's located in the amplifier rack. So all the mic channels go back to the amplifier rack and then send back to the console with one Ethernet cable. To that end, we also added a subwoofer, as well as the side fills to give you a little bit more full range. So you hear some bass frequencies. And I'm trying to think of anything else we upgraded that's worth noting.
All of the actual plugs up front?
Yeah, they've all been rewired, and any that were damaged were replaced. And they're all relabeled. So the numbers on those input channels, there's a new numbering system. So if someone tells you they're plugged into input 10, you'll know that it's snake channel number 10 at the console, if that ever comes up. I understand that's not going to be your day-to-day 90% of the time, but I just want to make sure we say that. There's a little bit more of a logic to that than maybe there was in the past. We also have the Bell microphones feeding back to the console directly as well, instead of what they were doing in the past, which was essentially going to a small mixer, then coming to the mixing console. So everything's going directly to the board. You do now have 4 choir microphones that are flexible in the fact that you can move them all around the sanctuary and plug them in and use them however you want to. What we've seen in the past 10 years is a lot of choirs, they want to move around. You may want to do some drama on the stage or the chancel area, and these microphones give you that flexibility to kind of do whatever you want to, as opposed to a microphone that's hanging from the ceiling that's a lot more static, and you're kind of stuck with the configuration. You can move these around and kind of change your configuration.
Okay, so these are not one-trick ponies. They can
move around
for presentation.
Absolutely,
where you wouldn't have to mic each individual person.
Yeah, because you're going to have different things come up. You can let's say you guys want to do a Zoom call and you want to configure the sanctuary to be able to do a Zoom call. You can have one of those so that you can hear the audience talking back to the Zoom participants online and things like that. I mean, there's all kind of things you can use those mics for.
Okay.
And they're made to pick up a group of people. That's kind of the nature of a condenser microphone. So on the board, I understand. I mean, this particular video is for those who've kind of been worshiping, or not worshiping, that have been volunteering with the ministry. And so we won't necessarily have to go to the basics, but I just want to say that the way that it used to operate with the faders is similar to the way that it operates now. You simply turn up channels and they go up on the they go up in the house system just like they always have. We didn't really try to redesign your workflow as much as make it more efficient, so that if you were comfortable with the way the board operated before, you should be comfortable with the way it is now. When you turn up something, a channel, in case you're wondering, if you turn up a channel on the board, it does turn it up in the subwoofer, the main, and the side fields at the same time. You don't have to turn them up separately relative to each other. You do have that ability if you ever wanted to do that, but currently the way that it is now, you turn up an individual channel, it'll turn it up in all three of those locations. The exception to that is going to be your auxiliary mixes, which live over here on the right side of the console. You've got a choir mix, you've got assisted listening mix, which is labeled aids for hearing aids, and then you've got stream, which is what sends out to the broadcast. So if in the event that you want to turn something down or up in any of those mixes, you simply select that particular mix, and then you turn that particular source up or down in that mix. And then when you're done, you can either hit that auxiliary button again or hit the left and right. It does the exact same thing, and it takes you back out to the main mix, to which you're mixing the speakers shooting out towards the audience at that time.
And that's one important change that we've made is the aux 1 used to be your house mix, and you would press aux 1 and then change the faders. Now the house mix is that LR.
Yeah, which stands for left and right, which is funny because you've got a mono system, but
right.
Still, it's still a stereo console, but we're summing it down to mono for the speaker. Typically in a church, you don't, especially more formal worship, a mono system is usually what gets installed, because you don't want somebody on the right side to hear something somebody on the left side can't hear, and
right.
We want the same sound throughout the sanctuary. What else do I want to mention here? If you're not currently, I do want to mention the PAFL. Was your team using that at all, ever?
Yeah, well, I do when I run the board. I think Ed does from time to time.
Yeah,
but I consider it kind of important, so you can separate out that one input.
Yeah, I do want to mention it. PAFL is a button that lives on every single channel. So, let's say let's say handheld 1. If let's say I've got 3 people singing, and I want to hear somebody singing out of key or something, I want to hear what that person's singing so I can hear that a little bit closer. I'll put on my headphones, I'll hit the PAFL button on that particular channel, and it sends it directly to my headphones. All the PAFL button means is I want to hear that thing in my headphones. That's all it means. It literally stands for pre-audio fade level, if I'm not mistaken. But you've also got a volume knob over here to control the volume going to your headphones. But the cool thing I want to mention is you can do the PAFL, or also known as solo. You can solo other things as well as individual channels. For instance, the choir says someone's not loud enough in their mix. In the past, you may have had to run up there and listen to it if you didn't believe them, or you keep turning up and they're saying we still can't hear it. But with the PAFL, I can grab my headphones, I can select the choir mix, and then select the master output. On the master output, I can hit the PAFL button, and I can listen to what the choir is listening to without having to walk up there. Same thing with the stream. If I want to check in and see what we're streaming, I can hit stream, I can hit PAFL, and now I'm listening to the stream mix. So somebody at home sending a message over Facebook, hey, we can't hear the pastor or whatever, you can go and verify that. So,
And this is kind of unique to us, but the way we have it set up, those last 3 yellows are actually our auxes going out. So you can
you can also do it there as well.
PAFL right there to quick listen to that.
A digital console's similar to a computer where you'll find that most functions have, 2-3 different ways to do it,
Right.
So that's good that you've got that. And some people like the fader action better than going to the actual, the mix to select that. So just remember when you're done, deselect the PAFL button to go back to where it was, go back to your main mix, and, always remember to go back to home base.
Right.
Otherwise, you will go in to try to start messing with something or put an EQ on something, and when you do, you'll be mixing something that was selected somewhere else, and you'll have to figure out what you did. I was going to mention something about the regarding PAFL. If you don't touch the PAFL, I just want to make sure that it's noted that you're listening to the master mix. It defaults to the master mix, which is what you're hearing out of your speakers. So that's kind of the home base for the PAFL function.
Okay.
Do you guys want to get into the nitty gritty of EQ, or is that audio 201?
You can hit the high spots on that. Just how to quickly pull up, select a channel, look at your EQ, and then fine tune it.
Yeah. So, just backing up with digital consoles in general, especially those who are confused by them or whatever, I think once you get to use digital consoles, I think you find that they're probably a little bit easier to use and navigate than an analog console. But, it's deceiving because you guys have got this board that's maybe 2 feet wide, but it's a 48 channel console. In the past, that would have been maybe 8 foot wide. And so
huge.
So the way they get around that, and the big idea, I don't want to assume everybody knows these things, is they have what we call layers. So layer A, layer B, layer C. And so you can fit 48 channels plus, on this small of a footprint by simply using layers. Which may be a bad thing if you're trying to mix, a whole orchestra at one time. But you guys don't use that many channels, so you don't really need to see more than 24 channels at a time. That's why the SQ6, which is the board you guys have, is kind of the appropriate console. Likewise, if in the past on an analog console, above the fader that you're adjusting, let's say the shotgun microphone, above it would be all the knobs and features associated with that fader would live above the fader. So on a digital console, not the case. You have to actually select that item that you want to adjust or manipulate, and then all of these knobs and faders and functions on the screen are pertaining to that thing that you select. Because there's so many features, if they didn't do that, the console would be so deep it would go out into the congregation. So, a ton of features packed into a small box here, and that's how they do it. So, but the key to it all, if you got that concept, the key is just remembering what has been selected, and remembering when you go to do something else and come back to manipulate something else that you select that thing. Even people that do this professionally day in and day out, they still miss that and they still forget that. And if you do make that mistake, it's very normal, it's very common. It's similar to adjusting a camera when it's live.
Right.
You kind of want to do that behind the scenes, but if you forget to press the right camera, you're manipulating a camera that's live, and
right.
Somebody could get nauseous watching it. So, key being, we're going to make a change. Let's say EQ or compression or anything else. If you want to get into the weeds of that, EQ is what most people will deal with at a volunteer level if you're not a pro, which also stands for equalizer. It's where you'll go in, you'll adjust bass, mid, high frequencies, also known as like bass, mid, treble. Maybe in your vehicle, you're used to that verbiage, but we in the pro audio world call it low, mid, high. And so you select the channel you want to manipulate, you make sure you're on the button that's labeled processing. And I know the video doesn't necessarily show you this that well, so you might want to practice with this or watch some other videos that kind of show you a zoomed in image of this. But you make sure you're in the processing section, and then for the selected channel that you have, you touch inside the graphic equalizer window, and you can go in there and make whatever adjustments you want to make. From left to right, it goes from bass to high. Seems logical, but if you've never messed with it before, it could seem a little hard to look at, and it looks like it might be complex, but really it's not. You come over here to the right side if you want to bring in some clarity or some treble. You touch one of the boxes and just bring it up or down if you're trying to boost or lower that frequency. If you're not sure of where it needs to go, a lot of people, let's say you want to add some clarity to a channel, but you're not sure of where to add that clarity. A lot of people will just touch the box, turn it up, and then just move it left to right until they hear what they need, and that's called sweeping. That allows you to kind of, if you're not exactly sure, hey, I want to adjust it, 1K, you can kind of listen for it and use your ears as your judgment there.
So I noticed on the choir mics, if you select one of those channels, you had set a couple items in the EQ, pulling out specific frequency ranges. Yep. What are some specific ranges that you might want to kind of keep an eye on?
Well, it's funny. That's actually not what the intent was. That's a process we call ringing out of microphone, and so that process is more about getting you the most amount of gain before feedback. So we turned up the choir mics. They started squealing. I saw where that frequency was. I went right to that frequency, turned it down, kept turning it up. It squealed again. I went to that frequency, just turned that frequency down. Again, things you couldn't necessarily do well in an analog console.
Right.
Digital console allows you to get right to that frequency and notch it without affecting a lot of the frequencies around it.
Okay.
I do that 3 times. That's just kind of a general rule. For me, I think if you go more than 3 times, you start really affecting the quality and the tonality of the microphone or the tone. So I just personally do, I ring out choir microphones 3 times, and from there, I try to get that should get you the most amount of gain before that feedback occurs.
Okay. And I believe you mentioned, was it 400? Was a key area that tends to cause?
From 400 to 450, if you're looking at the EQ frequencies here, I usually will pull that out in a well-tuned system just to eliminate, especially in the vocals, whether it's handheld or lapels, it just seems to eliminate kind of this boxy sound that you get with microphones right out of the box. You don't need to pull out too much, but just a little bit tends to do the job, and it kind of gives it more of that professional tone. Okay. So, a good place to start. You don't necessarily have to do that on the high end, the treble frequencies, because a lot of the manufacturers have those, especially like Sennheiser, will boost those a little bit on the high end, so you get more of a crisp sound, and they do that so that when you're comparing their mic to somebody else's, their sound's a little bit better. Shure does a good job of trying to make it just flat. They don't want to exaggerate anything. They want it to be a good reference, a good reference line across the spectrum, so that it just sounds natural right out of the box. And they don't try to play that game. They just want it to sound good. If you want to boost it, they'll let you boost it. But it looks like you guys are using all Shure microphones. So, from what I can tell,
yes.
So, what else? I'm just trying to...
I think that covers it. So, we've got the new speakers. All the mic inputs are routed through the Snake, and jacks replaced. And then we've talked about what changes on the board. We've got some equipment that was removed back here, but that's not something we dealt with on a weekly basis. But the important thing is that all of the inputs now come either directly to this board or directly to the Snake. So for the most part, all of our inputs and outputs are clean to the digital boxes, which we couldn't say before.
Yeah. Well, it helps with troubleshooting too. You don't have to say, I wonder if a cable went bad. Well, we know the cable didn't go bad because you wouldn't hear anything if the cable went bad because that cable controls it all now, and
Right.
it's a digital feed instead of analog. Did you guys? Do y'all deal with a lot of saving and recalling scenes ever, or is that something
No, we
don't?
typically we'll make a couple adjustments each week for maybe who has a mic or something like that. Mostly it's labeling,
Okay.
but we don't fundamentally restructure everything for a specific type
Okay.
of service. And we
Got
only
it.
do one service a week, so we don't have like a contemporary that would have more bells and whistles than a traditional service. So we don't do a lot of saving and recalling.
Okay. It's good for you have visiting quartets or different talent coming through.
Right.
You want to set up a custom scene, but if it's not the 99% of the time stuff that you're doing, you don't really want to include it in this video.
Okay.
But it's nice to know that you've got that function.
I think for us, mostly we back it up, and in case something gets changed, we could always go back to where it was before.
Another thing that I don't see you guys utilizing, that I'm just putting a bug in your ear on this, is the soft keys. I just want you to know that they're here. I want you to know what
Yes.
they are, why they're there. And that can be, that can be save, that can be recall, that can
Okay.
be whatever you want it to be. So you
Okay.
don't have to go into the menu. So be sure to use those if you
Okay.
think that will benefit you. And I'll be happy to
We may talk about that
happy to set
a
that
little
up for
more in a few minutes. Yeah, that's great. And what can you think of any other specific applications for soft keys that we would use?
They can be scene recalls, and while you think, and a scene is just it's just a saved snapshot of the board.
Right.
The scene comes from Broadway, and it's Phantom of the Opera scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, and they're just hitting next. They don't really run sound for the show. They've already mixed it, and
Right.
so it's just recalled. But a scene can be, we can call this church a show, and you could divide it out into scenes, and those scenes can equal something in the bulletin.
Right.
And
Okay.
that can mean, the pastor's mic gets turned up or down or whatever. And so you can hit a button that says pastor, pulpit, lectern, and it can be that simple to run the console if you wanted to get it there, which would maybe make it a little bit more palatable for volunteers. There can be a button here that says autopilot. Everything turns up, but maybe 5 decibels less, 4 to 5 decibels less than normal. So it wouldn't be a loud service, but it's, Thursday night, there's a funeral, there's a wedding, the show goes on. Pastors love that kind of a button where they can just come back and just hit this, and whatever
Okay.
happens, and nobody had to be back here to run the sound.
Yeah, we'll have to explore that. Okay.
Know
Makes
that
sense.
kind of stuff can exist.
Right.
But you
We
just
do a
want to be.
cantata once a year. That's the application
Yes.
that comes to mind,
Yes.
where you might have everything balanced specifically for that setting where the choir has maybe extra members, and everything's sort of set up for that. And then there's the other part of the service where things are not quite the same.
Well, the
So-
key in a cantata, and I can say this because my church used to do it, so I'm not picking on your church, but the key to a cantata is pumping in that vocal feed to the choir to give them that confidence, fill
Right.
them out a little bit. It'll still sound like the choir out here, but to them it gives them a little bit more confidence, for their cues and things like that.
Right.
And that's kind of the popular setting on a cantata. And then,
Okay.
of course, left up, which is just the music right down. You pull out the vocals in the house. So that a perfect example is a cantata.
Okay.
But I think that's it.
I think so. I hope this video is helpful for you guys. And if you have questions, you can ask me, and I may have to forward them to Zach. But I think that covers it for now. So
Very good.
I think that.
Thank you.
Good.